So this, you know, one day I decided to go to Leeds. I caught a train up there, and within 5 minutes of getting there and getting off the station, this homeless guy approached me, and I was like, okay, what the heck's gonna happen here? So this guy came up to me and he was like, oh, hey, can you give me some money? And I was like, no, sorry, I don't have any money. And then he replies and says, oh, God, typical of you people. And I was just like there thinking, are you serious? Like, are you serious?
So yeah, like when I'm on the bus and the bus is packed, people kind of hesitate to sit next to me. Some people, and this happened like literally the other day. And it's when that happens you start to sort of think, like, is it because I'm black? Is it the fact that I'm Muslim? Is it because of what's going on in the news? And in relation to what triggers it as well, like the new social media and like the kind of conversations currently going on in politics, sort of starts to make you think, like, I have to like step up. I have to say something because like, I'm from that background, that kind of background where people say, oh, you're a terrorist.
I didn't know what Freshers Week was the first time I arrived. I didn't really know what anything was. My flatmates went out without me, and it was also my birthday week that week. I guess it was kind of my fault because I didn't really know that much English, but I guess it was their fault too because they just assumed that I wanted to stay in my room and just play video games all day.
There was a white woman and her son who were in the swimming pool as well. I think her son was playing with loads of his sailboats, and one of them sort of wandered towards us, and my mum did what everyone else would do. She tried to reach out to it, and then she tried to give it back to them, but the sailboat snapped, and you can't imagine how horrified my mum was. And she apologized profusely. She even offered to buy them a new one, but I still couldn't believe the white woman said something like, you African people always break things.
I was working in Manchester over winter, and Manchester has a relatively large Jewish population, so neighborhoods, schools, and the like. And being winter, I would wear a hat and a coat. I remember I had a beard as well at the time. And I happened to be passing through one of these neighborhoods when a kid ran up to me and said, "You dirty fucking Jew."
So I played football, soccer. And so I played. Then the game was finished, and our team beat the other team. And there was this guy. He must have been 11, 12 as well. And he came up to me. He came up and said, "Listen, you know why you're so good and why you won. It's because you're a nigger." It was very interesting that reading the two extracts, obviously from people who are very different to me, it was very immediate and made me think a bit more deeply about the issues, especially when I was working on the extracts. And they detailed situations which I hadn't really faced in those terms. And it made me think about how it affects other people.
When you're kind of subjugated to express someone else's opinion, but it's not your opinion, but you're expressing it, it teaches you to be even more conscious and aware of how people may perceive you or perceive others. So I find the whole task to be really helpful for people who maybe can't put themselves in other people's shoes, like just kind of show that bit of empathy.
It makes me question, like, to what extent can they relate to what I'm saying? To what extent can they kind of feel the experiences that I felt just as much as I feel the experiences of the person that I've spoke for today?
Being a black Muslim in this country, I imagine currently must be very difficult, especially when, you know, what the guy was saying, like the current political climate isn't really favouring that at all, and it's, yeah, I think it's when you feel for something more, you sort of care more about it, you put more into it. So I definitely felt more for that person.
To me, when I was saying them out loud, I felt like it's my own story, because even though it is not the same as what I've experienced, but the sort of attitude of people treating towards me and the person who I was speaking for, and I feel the same.
And when I went home that night, my father said, "Hey, what happened? Coach told me you punched a guy." And I said, "Yeah," and he was like, "Why?" And I said, "Because he called me a nigger." And my dad was like, "Okay, we need to talk about that word."
Just seeing that was, I'm not gonna lie, it did feel like, I know that it was my story, but just listening to him convey it, I almost forgot in that moment that it wasn't my story, that it was just a story about, you know, a kid learning about racism but not being conscious about it from where they lived, and being able to say that word in the context of my story is, I don't know, in a way maybe giving it a bit of leeway. I don't know, people might be totally offended by it, and I understand that, because a lot of that word must be to them associated with shame. For me, it's associated with, you know, terminology of slavery.
Part of the reason surrounding why perhaps white people might find it so hard not to say the word is because in societies that celebrate white culture and uphold it as the paragon, really, of whether it's a beauty ideal or really a standard of presentation, white people sort of grew up with a sense of entitlement to everything. So there's never really been a point where they've had to not do something.
When, for example, there's like a film on racism or slavery and you have the white actor saying the N-word, you know, we feel uncomfortable, but we understand the fact that the reason why they're saying it is because, you know, that they're telling the story of what happened back then and how people spoke then. So he's telling the story of somebody who experienced racism, and that's their story, and it has that word in it, unfortunately. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, even though it might make people feel uncomfortable.
And he explained, "It's really bad, darling. But it's because he's just drawing out one thing about you. It's from your physical appearance. It's the melanin in your skin. And he's saying that you're black." And I said, I never ever realized that. I just thought I was like all the other girls and boys, you know?
I almost relived it when he was saying it, and I was like, "Oh, it still gets me." And it's not because, I guess, yes, the word, but it's also because of the way that I went about learning about the word and being so innocent to then having my eyes open, and I'm like, I'm not gonna get that innocence back.
So, bearing that in mind, how do you feel about the fact that we're 3 white students making this film?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me this.
Be any race or...
Oh, cis white male, all the way. That's like on the checklist of like shit for an easy life.
Which would you choose?
That would be a cat. No,
I didn't really know what anything was. My flatmates went out without me, and it was kind of shit because I can't swear, can I?
Yeah, you can.
Fuck.
Go for
Okay.
it.